Secretary of Defense.
Okay. A couple other quick things on immigration. In his interview with ABC News yesterday, the president was sort of asked about future presidents, Democrat or Republicans, using this as a precedent. And he seemed to say and dismiss the idea that it could be used on taxes, saying absolutely not. It's not legitimate for the next president to say we're not going to enforce certain tax laws. How can he make such a blanket statement when he's applying this principle to immigration law that's on the books? And frankly, he doesn't know if it's a Democrat or Republican, how they're going to approach this. How does this not open the door to a pretty large precedent?
That's a good question. I think there are a couple of reasons for that, Ed. The first is we're not talking about whether or not the president's going to enforce certain laws. We're talking about the Department of Homeland Security using prosecutorial discretion to sharpen the focus of enforcement on those who pose a threat to national security and those who pose a threat to public safety. That is consistent with the kinds of executive actions that previous presidents have taken in this area. Every administration is challenged to make a decision about how to use limited resources to enforce the law. And in this case, the president believes that those limited resources should be focused on cracking down on criminals, on those who pose a threat to public safety, and those, of course, who pose a threat to national security. The tax law thing is obviously much different. I mean, I think the analogy would be that refusing to enforce certain tax laws would be akin to refusing to enforce any laws as it relates to our border, for example. That's not at all what the president is doing. In fact, as we've discussed quite a bit over the last couple of years, enforcement at the border is actually up under President Obama, and that's thanks to the investment that we've made in terms of manpower and resources at the border.
But I thought George Stephanopoulos was trying to say, you know, the next president could say, I'm going to enforce personal income tax. That's a bigger priority. I'm going to enforce corporate taxes, but capital gains taxes, maybe not as important, and could pick and choose, I think was the point that was made. So how do you know? How do you know this is not a precedent on laws across the books?
Well, I guess that's a question that you could have asked President Reagan after he announced his executive action in terms of using prosecutorial discretion to reform the immigration law. I guess the other thing is this, is that certainly when it comes to our tax law, there are important restrictions as it relates to political interference in the enforcement of tax law. Those are laws that have been scrupulously abided by in this administration, and we anticipate the other administrations would as well.
Last one on tax laws. It's a rather long